Overdrive today, we bring you the new and updated Hyundai Alcazar, and we pit the new Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 against the Triumph Speed 400 and the Hero Maverick 440. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dutt. The Hyundai Alcazar has been in the Indian market since 2021 and hasn't seen as much success in the Indian market despite being based on the best-selling SUV, the Creta. Now, Hyundai has decided to make good of that missed opportunity by giving it a few modifications and changes. Here's taking a look at what has really changed and whether it makes it a better product.
The Hyundai Alcazar facelift continues to be offered with the same engines as before. These are the 1.5-litre turbo petrol with 160 PS and 253 Nm, paired with the 7-speed DCT and the 1.5 diesel with 116 PS and 250 Nm with a 6-speed torque converter. There's also a 6-speed manual on offer with both. Now we are driving the Alcazar with the 1.5 turbo petrol and the DCT, and to be honest, the experience is very similar to the Creta. You wouldn't be surprised, of course, by that. But I must say that even though it's pulling a lot more weight, the engine is still reasonably sprightly. Now yes, the 0 to 100 time that's claimed of 9.5 seconds is a bit slower than what we've tested the turbo petrol Creta that ducks under 9, and it feels as such on the move too. You do notice you're pulling along a bit more weight, but it in no way feels labored, so it's still agile. So the engine is still especially refined. And yes, of course, it takes some waking up, but once it does, it has that really smooth, linear power band to it. It's not the most exciting turbo petrol engine, of course, but it is effective. But it does happen to be quite a refined motor. It's not too loud or clattery at city speeds, and wind noise is well in check at higher speeds as well. You get the drive and traction modes here too, and they work much in the same way as the Creta. The drive modes progressively sharpen engine and gearbox responses, while the traction modes change the responses again, and also the traction control maps to match various terrains. The gearbox, like before, seems quite well matched to the engine. It doesn't feel hesitant at lower speeds and usually has you right where you need to be in the power band. You only really notice it in heavier driving, where it could be a bit more aggressive with its shifts, say during a high-speed overtake, but the sport mode improves this a notch. But for most needs, the default normal mode is good enough. Now, where there is some difference from the Creta is in the way the Alcazar rides and handles. Now, that's obviously because of the longer wheelbase, the 150mm that's been added, and generally the longer length of the car. And also the fact that these top-end versions ride on 18-inch wheels against the 17s in the Creta. Even with the larger wheels, Hyundai has managed to hold on to that good ride that the Creta has become quite well known for with this generation or with this latest update. So say over a broken patch of road like we are on right now, yeah, you do feel it a bit more. The 18-inch wheels, a bit more of it is sort of transmitted into the cabin, so to speak. There is a slightly firmer edge, but it's never uncomfortable or harsh or noisy in here. So if you take it easy, it just sort of does its best to sort of smooth over these imperfections. And yeah, it does have that quite stable, secure feel to it, even on these surfaces. It's got a nice balance between being light for city use, but it's also quite precise, so even on the highway you won't be second guessing yourself too much. So you do notice that it has a bit more stability at higher speeds doing highway speeds, but again, it's marginal. You'll have to drive both this and the Creta back to back to really notice that. So if you like driving, it's okay for you. If you aren't really interested in all of these things, then that's also fine. It's just a safe, reliable way to sort of get from one place to other. This 2024 Alcazar has grown by 60mm from the last car, although most of it is down to the new cosmetic changes. But it's what Hyundai has done with these dimensions that is more significant. There's a distinct face here with the wide, horizontal, darkened grille and the different edge pattern themes in the DRLs. Well done, almost in a Kia-like manner, are the various material finishes seen on the grille and bumpers. New are the 18-inch wheels. They are a size up from the standard Creta and get quite a sharp look. The rear has also taken on a fairly unique look. The two-part theme from earlier is carried over, but the full width effect and the vertical light cluster make this section resemble Hyundai's larger global SUVs the most. Now, one of the reasons you might want to consider the Alcazar over the Creta or any of these other mid-size SUVs is probably for the boot space. Now, of course, with all the 3 rows up, it's about 180 liters. So, say your usual grocery run, it'll easily do that. But the real trick is when you sort of fold this third row completely flat. Now, it's a completely flat lip here, so it's very easy to just say roll an item right to the end of the space. So, and then you get about 579 liters, which is right on par with some sedans, maybe even more than some sedans. As with the last Alcazar, the dashboard is shared with the Creta. The new color palette with the silver and gloss black highlighting give this space a more classy sense. This also goes well with the modern layout with the curved screen setups, the slim vents and the horizontal accents. While panel gaps and fitments could be tighter, something we noticed with the new Creta too, the textures around the steering wheel and armrests feel of a better quality than in the Creta with the materials that have been used. On the flip side, the new central column is now better to use. You have larger, well-designed layouts for some of the important functions that are still here. Also, a good addition is that the center armrest now slides and makes for more comfort during driving. Of course, this car is meant to be for the chauffeur-driven set, so to speak. So, a lot of the differentiation anyway comes from here, but we'll quickly go through how that works. Now, to start with, the seats, they're different from what you get in the Creta. Now, these two seats seem very, very similar except for the headrest, but just the kind of support they have and the cushioning and the contouring seems very different from what the Creta offers, and it is definitely a step up. Now, where things get better is that you get a recline function. Now, this is there from the last Alcazar, so that's not quite different, but you also now get ventilation function in the rear seat, the second row of seats. You get these winged headrests and of course this squab. Now this squab for me particularly doesn't work all that well. There's not that much range, so I could either do with or without it. It's not much of a question for me. And in terms of legroom, I have decent space for myself. You now get this really quite neat boss function. I mean, the Tucson is the only other Hyundai that gets it, so you know that it's a pretty high-end feature. And when you do have your seat like this, then there's more than enough space for your needs, for pretty much any needs. Now, again, the headroom is pretty decent for my needs. Again, someone maybe slightly taller will want for more. And you have the other features that have been carried over from the Creta, for example, these sunshades, these two Type-C chargers and wireless charger that's been quite neatly integrated into the cubbyhole. Now, needless to say, all of this isn't in the same sort of space as the Creta, and there has been a wheelbase extension. It's about 150 mm longer than the regular Creta. The new Alcazar continues with the Hyundai tradition of offering a long features list with some new additions over the Creta. Here's a look at what's on offer. The safety features are largely the same as the Creta. Now, this being the captain seat 6-seater version of the Alcazar, getting into the third row is a bit of a hassle, to be honest. Now, I can't really do it from here. The space is really quite tight and just the whole angle of it with the wheel well, it's not very comfortable at all. But Hyundai has made some change here. Like earlier, there used to be a small center console arrangement here, which actually held the wireless charger, but that's been removed. So one way of getting in now is to just walk through the cabin here. Now again, of course it's not very elegant at all, and the space is best reserved for children if they have to walk in like this. But when you do come in here, you realize that space is not all that bad. I mean, yeah, I have this seat fully pushed back. This is not a full-size 3-row SUV, but yes, if you are an adult, you will be cramped here, and it's best left for children in my opinion. I can also raise this headrest and it's fine. Now, headroom is a serious problem. I'm not very tall, and for me too, there's only about this much space. So yeah, if you're of above average height, you will find that to be an issue here. Maybe you'll have to crouch forward. But I must say, Hyundai has done well with amenities here too. You get AC vents, you get Type-C charge ports for each passenger, and even a control for the blower, which is not bad, and lights. Priced between rupees 14.99 lakh and rupees 21.55 lakh, the Alcazar costs up to rupees 1.4 lakh more than the Creta for the top versions. There could have been a touch more space for this in the second and third row and a bit more differentiation in the dash design. But otherwise, this seemed like a fair deal for the added features you get, the slightly more premium sense you get inside and out, and the competent driving experience that's on offer.
Now, do let us know in the comment section on our YouTube channel whether you feel the updated Alcazar is going to make a difference in the Indian market. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, we will pit 3 retro-style sub-500cc motorcycles against each other. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, if you're in the market for top-tier sub-500cc Roadster motorcycles, and look no further than the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450, the Triumph Speed 400, and also the Hero Maverick 450. Now, we decided to pit these motorcycles against each other from 3 various different manufacturers to find out just who does what best.
It's an exciting time to be out in the market looking to buy your first single-cylinder sub-500cc motorcycle, because, well, there's a horde to choose from. Whether it's sporty motorcycles to adventure tourers, there's a lot of options out there currently. But today out here we have 3 motorcycles that cater to a very unique segment, and that is the retro-themed Roadster. Now, these motorcycles, they are supposed to be fun and exciting rides. How they fare out on the road comparatively in this test, you're about to find out. The Maverick 440 is Hero's first venture into the premium motorcycle space above 300 cc's. And of course, it has proved to be, as far as Hero MotoCorp is concerned, well, it has upped the game in terms of refinement and quality. But then again, it's here to prove what it can do in comparison to the rest out here. Alright, so now moving on to the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450. Now, if you're thinking it, well, you might be wrong, because this is not simply a restyled Himalayan 450. Now, there's a lot that's changed on this motorcycle from, well, it is lighter, it sits closer to the ground, shorter wheelbase, different swing arm, a smaller sprocket at the back, which has changed the gear ratios. And, well, overall, it is just tuned to be a lot less of an adventure tourer and more of a user-friendly road bike. And like the others out here, it has got its point to prove. Moving on to the Triumph. Now, this is easily one of the most modern, classic, well, a fan favorite in the segment, because, well, it's got speed, it's got agility, maybe not so much in terms of, well, flashy looks or gimmicky features as well. This motorcycle pretty much broke the mold in terms of making a brand name like Triumph, and more importantly, a very fun motorcycle, very accessible to the common man. Now, like the others out here today, it has its point to prove in this company, and the time for talk is over. It's time to get to business and see how these motorcycles square up against each other.
Now, all 3 motorcycles here have an upright riding position with wide handlebars. But that's pretty much where the similarities end, to be honest. Now, each have their own sets of unique charms in their design, and let's start off with the Triumph. The riding position on the Triumph is upright, but quite relaxed with the low position foot pegs. The attention to detail and the level of fit and finish is a real standout with the Speed. It aesthetically tries to mimic what you get with bigger, more expensive bikes, which is great to see and feel. In terms of features, it's got a rather plain but slightly odd instrumentation readout. Now, I would have preferred if it had an analog tacho needle and a digital speedo readout instead, but that's alright. Now, there's no Bluetooth connectivity here as well, and in fact it's the only one that misses out on this feature. But it's the only one that gets switchable traction control. Now, bar and mirrors, well, it lends a touch of class, but it could get in the way when you're trying to squeeze past standing traffic. The Maverick 440 is a rather bold statement from Hero. It looks and feels very premium by the company's standards, and although it shares many of its cycle parts with the Harley-Davidson X440, I love the fact that this one has these tank extensions that cover the otherwise ghastly gap between the tank and the fork, as you can see on the Harley. In the pictures, it shows off hints of a muscle bike, and when you actually get down to riding it, you'll see that part of that character is in fact translated. You'll feel a certain amount of heft with this one, but it's not a burden by any means. The upright riding position with mid-mounted foot controls is not overly stressing as well. The saddle gives you plenty of room to move about, and it's got lots of Hero branding all over, which does look neat in some places, like the H-themed lights at both ends. The Maverick also may have the least interesting display of the three out here today, but the patch on the left side of the handlebar really gets to me. Probably because I know that it's the place that the toggle buttons would ideally be on the more expensive Harley-Davidson X440. And this is also the only one that gets twin shocks at the rear as well. There's no hiding this Gorilla. It's a bike that stands out no matter what colorway you choose. And it looks like a motorcycle that's been going to the gym regularly and not skipping out on leg days either. I mean, look at those tires. It's got the biggest section tires for a bike of its kind, with the 120 up front and a 160 section at the rear. Still, it feels a lot lighter than the Himalayan 450 at least. Well, there's no upside down fork, a smaller wheel at the fore, and yes, there is an odd looking gap in the headlight housing, but aside from that, nothing much to complain about. The bike looks big and it feels so when you actually get astride it as well. The tank looks massive, but it holds just 11 liters of fuel, which is too shy of the others out here. The riding position is a little more aggressive with higher mounted foot pegs, so taller riders will feel a little cramped over long distances on this one. I feel a longer seat would have suited the Gorilla better too. This top spec model has got the fancy TFT display, which allows you to cast your phone screen onto the device, and it's got all the switchgear from the Himalayan 452, which is good for most part. Now this one's got switchable ABS and it's even got 2 ride modes. But I didn't like how Eco mode dials down the attitude of this bike, so I pretty much stayed away from it.
Well, we're not done with this comparison story just yet. More action after this very short break. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now we've been stacking the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 against the Triumph Speed 400 as well as the Hero Maverick 450. And we've spoken about the design and features, but now it's time to talk about the performance and also bring you the verdict.
Now, real standout bit about the Guerrilla 450 has to be that Sherpa 452cc single-cylinder liquid-cooled engine. Now, of course, it's the same unit that has been carried over from the Himalayan 450. It makes the same amount of power and torque at 40 PS and 40 Nm. But then the rate of delivery has changed tremendously on account of the final drive ratio, which has been altered, as well as that rear sprocket. Now, the rear sprocket has 2 teeth less than before. It's down to 45 now, and that has altered the way this motorcycle performs. And well, it responds to your throttle inputs, well, lower down the power band as well. From 2000 to 4000, it feels a lot livelier than before, than something on the Himalayan. And of course, once it's past that 4500 mark, well, this thing just takes off. It just wants to fly, and that's something that you'll really appreciate on this motorcycle.
In terms of mileage, the RE gave back 28 kilometers per litre overall, which is the least from all the 3 that we have out here today. And considering that it has the smallest fuel bladder, well, you'll be stopping to tank up more often than not in this kind of company. The Speed 400 makes almost the same amount of power as the Guerrilla, but not as much torque. But what stands out here is the rate of power delivery, which is very linear and there's no sudden spikes, like with the Enfield. Things are smooth but a bit lackluster under 2500 to say around 3000 RPM, but it's a lot more tractable than the motor on the Enfield, and it manages lower speeds at higher gears a lot better and doesn't grumble as much in the process. Things remain composed and very gentlemanly up to the 5000 to 6000 RPM mark, where you'll hit a sweet spot if you plan on cruising at around say 100 kilometers per hour, with the liquid-cooled 398cc motor humming nicely with some nice acoustics from the exhaust can as well. Open throttle and she's ready to rock and roll, just that it isn't as anxious to propel you forward with ferocity as much as the Enfield. In terms of running efficiency, the Triumph, well, it finished a marginal second to the Hero, returning 34.5 kilometers per litre. With the Maverick 440, it's not about being flashy or fast. It's more of a relaxed bike where you take things easy and have fun while doing so. If it's high speed you seek, you'll have to be patient with the Hero, because let's just say that you're not going to win any sprint races with this one. Which is fine, because it goes well with the long stroke motor, which gives this bike a very distinct character with a somewhat familiar but very different melodic thumb to it. But sadly, this engine lacks downright refinement. It felt less refined than the motor on the Harley X440 too, and it's pretty much the same motor in there. Now, if you're cruising at around 80 kilometers per hour and that is your deal, well, the Hero does this masterfully well. The brakes and the suspension hold up very nicely at the speeds this bike is capable of achieving, but sadly, speeds in excess of 100 kilometers per hour feel like you're really pushing it more than you ideally should.
Alright, now let's get one thing straight. If you opt to buy or go in for any of these three motorcycles, you are going to be judged by your peers. And according to me, at least, well, if you opt for something like the Hero Maverick 440, you will be seen as a very easygoing, relaxed person who's usually not in a hurry to get from A to B, and at the end of it, a hero fanboy. But then again, if you opt for something like the Triumph Speed 400, now you will be seen as more of the connoisseur of the finer things in life. Likes to keep things neat and tidy, loves to ride sporty, and yes, with agility and a bit of stealth thrown into the mix as well. And of course, moving to the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450. Now, if you opt for this particular machine, you will be seen as a person who just wants all eyes on me at all times. And yes, it might be a bit heavy, it might be a little cumbersome to ride in comparison to the other two. But then again, it's all about aggression and power. More aggression, more power. This machine, it's all about that. But for me personally, I would really fancy something like the Triumph Speed 400 because of the current package that it offers. It is sporty, it is nimble, it is a real breeze and a hoot to ride, not only in the city, but once you actually get out onto the open roads out of town. And of course, fairly decently priced. Now, yes, that's a great thing. And of course, this motorcycle, it doesn't have a comprehensive list of, well, fancy gimmicky features that could go awry somewhere down the line in the future. So this is the motorcycle that I pick as my winner. Which one do you choose? That is depending all on your riding style.
That's it then from us on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with us through our various social media platforms, and you can write to us on YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.